Okay, let's unpack this. From that full sacrifice, they gathered the grains of butter and made it into the creatures of the air, the forest, and the village. That's a quote from the ROG Veda, an ancient Indian collection of hymns. Isn't it wild to think about something as simple as butter, being linked to the very creation of life? It hints at this deep interconnectedness that runs through so much of what we eat.
It really does. And what's fascinating here is how that seemingly poetic idea actually has roots in the biological realities of food. Production and transformation. Think about it. Milk, which becomes butter, is itself a product of an animal's life, sustained by plants. It's all connected.
Exactly. And that's where we're headed in this deep dive. We've got a stack of notes and insights pulled from a fantastic culinary science text. And our mission today is, well, to explore the surprising connections between what might seem like totally different food groups. We're talking milk, eggs, meat, fish, and even plants. We're going to see how the domestication of animals ties into fermentation science and how cooking techniques unlock flavors that have been evolving for millennia.
And another key aspect, I think, is how understanding these connections can really deepen your appreciation for the food on your plate. It's not just sustenance. It's the result of complex natural processes and, frankly, human ingenuity, too.
All right, so let's start with something fundamental. Milk seems so simple, but the story of how we came to rely on it is pretty cool.
It really is. Around 30 million years ago, the Earth's climate shifted. You got these vast grasslands appearing, this favored ruminant animals like cattle, sheep, goats, which evolved this unique ability to digest tough, dry grasses, thanks to their multi-chambered stomachs.
Oh, right. The ruminants.
Yeah. Their success in these changing climates essentially paved the way for a consistent milk supply for human use later on. We're talking cattle, buffalo, sheep, goats, camels, even yaks. All these milk producers are ruminants adapted to these drier environments. It's almost as if the landscape itself sort of pre-selected the animals that would later nourish us with milk.
Okay, so the landscape itself kind of dictated which animals would be available for milking. Makes sense. Now, when you think about milk, cream and butter are never far behind. How did we go from one to the other, especially, in the old days?
Traditionally, creaming was just a natural process. Fresh milk, left to cool, would separate, right? The lighter fat globules rise to the top. It was slow. But for millennia, that cream was the precursor to butter.
Just letting it sit.
Exactly. And interestingly, this rising wasn't just about buoyancy. Minor milk proteins, we call them lipoproteins, would actually attach to the fat globules and clump them together into much larger clusters, which made them rise faster. Heat disrupts this, which is why pasteurized milk separates more slowly. And the milk from goats, sheep, and buffalo. Their globules are smaller, they have less of these clustering proteins, so it separates even slower. This seemingly small detail explains why homemade, less processed butter often has a richer flavor profile. Those protein interactions contribute to its unique character, a nuance often lost in industrial production.
So a little protein teamwork happening there. Then came the Industrial Revolution and things, sped up, right?
Exactly. The 19th century brought us centrifuges for rapid fat concentration and homogenization to prevent separation altogether. It's worth noting how these industrial processes, while making milk more consistent, more readily available, also altered some of its fundamental characteristics.
Yeah, I remember reading about how standardized milk has become. It's kind of wild to think that most of what we drink comes from Holstein cows, fed the same stuff year-round, and all that milk gets pooled together from massive dairies. Does this industrialization of milk production mean we've lost some of the nuances in flavor and character that might have existed historically?
Precisely. That's why the persistence of smaller dairies, using different breeds, letting their animals graze on varied pastures, processing milk more minimally. It offers a glimpse into what milk used to taste like, a reflection of the local environment and the animal's diet.
It's like the difference between a mass-produced wine and something from a small vineyard, definitely. Speaking of processing, pasteurization is something we take for granted now, but it has a pretty serious history, right?
Absolutely crucial for safety. In past centuries, raw milk was a significant source of dangerous diseases like tuberculosis and undulant fever, not to mention just simple food poisoning. Even before we fully understood microbes, people advocated boiling milk, just as a way to make it safer. The regulation of the dairy industry and the widespread requirement for pasteurization in the early 20th century were major public health victories. It's sobering to think about the public health impact before those regulations were in place.
Definitely makes you appreciate that carton in the fridge a little more. Now we've got all these different kinds of cream pouring, double, clotted. What's the deal there? What's the difference?
It all comes down to fat content, really. Pouring cream has a lower fat percentage than double cream, which is richer. Clotted cream is even higher in fat, almost spreadable. Then you have plastic cream with a very high fat content.
Okay.
And crème fraîche, that's where beneficial bacteria come back into play, giving it that characteristic thick and slightly tart quality through fermentation.
Ah, the microbes again.
Yeah. And what's fascinating here is that light cream, unlike heavy cream, still has enough of the main milk protein, casein, to make acid-curdled mascarpone. Casein's structure allows it to interact with acids in a way that leads to this thickening.
Okay, fat content and a bit of microbial magic. Got it. What about something universally loved, like ice cream? What's the science behind a good scoop?
Balance is key. It's all about the ratio of water, sugar, and milk fat. You want enough fat for creaminess and a smooth, luxurious texture, but not so much that it turns into butter during the freezing process.
Right, don't want butter chunks.
Exactly. Sugar helps prevent the formation of large, icy crystals, but too much leads to a heavy, syrupy result. Most good recipes aim for around 60% water, 15% sugar, and maybe 10% to 20% milk fat.
Okay.
And remember, serving it slightly warmer actually enhances the flavor and softens the texture. Makes it easier to scoop and enjoy.
Good tip. Now, we've touched on crème fraîche, but let's dive deeper into the world of fermented dairy. Yogurt, sour cream. It's all about those tiny little helpers, right? The microbes.
Exactly. Milk naturally fosters certain microbes that consume its lactose sugar and convert it into lactic acid. This process not only preserves the milk, but also gives it those characteristic tangy flavors and thicker, more stable textures. This fermentation by bacteria was a vital way for dairying peoples to preserve milk and create new foods long before refrigeration came along.
Makes sense. And butter itself can be a product of fermentation, can it? It's not just about churning cream.
Right. Traditional butter making often involved allowing raw milk to sit, letting those natural bacteria grow and impart a more complex flavor to the cream before churning. Nowadays, we intentionally add cream cultures, specific bacteria like Lactococcus and leuconostoc.
Okay.
And what's fascinating here is their ability to convert citrate, a minor component of milk, into diacetyl.
Diacetyl.
Yeah, that single compound is so strongly associated with butter flavor that it can make other things taste buttery too, like some Chardonnay wines.
Wow, really? Why?
Yeah, it's a surprising example of how a specific molecule can have such a powerful flavor association.
Wow, that's a surprising link. So even wine can have a little better connection. And then we get into the amazing world of cheese, where microbes are the real stars of the show, you could say.
Absolutely. Cheese making is essentially a controlled decomposition and recomposition of milk by a whole cast of microbial players. You have starter bacteria, like Lactococci and Lactobacilli, that acidify the milk and significantly contribute to flavor development during ripening.
Okay.
Their enzymes keep working for months, breaking down proteins into savory amino acids. Then you have different types of starters, mesophilic that prefer moderate temperatures, and thermophilic that thrive in the heat, used for cheeses like mozzarella and the Alpine varieties.
Right, different temperatures for different cheeses.
Exactly. And some traditional starters are even made from the watery byproduct of cheese making from the previous batch. It's like they're passing down a lineage of flavor-producing microbes.
It's like they're passing down the microbial magic.
That's cool. And what about the texture of cheese? Why is mozzarella so stringy while Parmesan just crumbles? What's going on there? That stringiness is primarily due to the structure of the casein protein molecules in milk. When these proteins are mostly intact and linked together by calcium, they form long, continuous fibers that stretch when heated.
Okay, like little ropes.
Kind of, yeah. If the ripening enzymes have broken down the casein protein network too much, you lose that stringiness, which is why well-aged cheeses like Parmesan don't get stringy. Their protein structure has been significantly altered. The degree of calcium cross-linking, which is influenced by factors like acidity, moisture content, fat content, salt concentration, and the age of the cheese. That also plays a crucial role in determining texture.
Lots of factors.
Yeah. High acidity, for instance, removes calcium, preventing that stretchy network from forming. Higher moisture, fat, and salt levels can help to keep the casein molecules separated to some extent. So stringy cheeses like mozzarella and cheddar have a balance of these factors that favors that protein network, while crumbly cheeses like Cheshire and Leicester have a different balance that leads to a more fragile structure. Gruyere, being moister and saltier, melts beautifully in fondue while still retaining some structure, whereas in Parmesan, The protein breakdown is so extensive that it disperses easily in sauces.
Oh, okay.
So think of casein as the building blocks, and calcium as the glue holding them together in stretchy chains. Factors like acidity and moisture can either strengthen or weaken that glue, leading to the different textures we see.
Cheese is truly a microbial masterpiece.
Mm.
And a structural one.
Okay, let's move on to another breakfast staple. Eggs. It seems like such a simple thing, but there's a lot going on inside that shell, isn't there?
There certainly is. The 20th century saw a massive industrialization of egg production. The chicken book quote you might have seen really captures this shift. From the traditional farmyard hen to the modern industrial unit where the chicken is often viewed primarily as, well, a component in an efficient egg-producing process.
Yeah.
It's a very different perspective on where our food comes from. It's a pretty stark contrast to the image of chickens pecking around in a farmyard.
Definitely.
What about the egg itself, that little air cell at the blunt end? What's that telling us?
That air cell forms as the egg cools after being laid, and its contents contract slightly. The size of that airspace is a key indicator of freshness. A larger air cell generally means an older egg, as more moisture and carbon dioxide have had time to escape through the porous shell and be replaced by air.
Good to know. Check the air cell. And then you've got the yolk and the white, which are so different in composition and function.
The yolk, making up just over a third of the egg, is the nutritional powerhouse, packed with calories, iron, thiamine, vitamin A. Its characteristic yellow color comes from pigments called xanthophylls, which the hen gets from her diet.
Okay.
Interestingly, duck yolks are often a deeper orange, thanks to higher levels of beta-carotene and canthaanthin in their feed.
Oh.
But a word of caution for bakers. Egg yolks contain an enzyme called amylase, which can break down starch and potentially thin your pie fillings or custards if not properly controlled.
Uh-oh, a sneaky saboteur. Good to know about the amylase. What about the white? It seems much simpler.
The egg white, or albumin, is composed mostly of water and protein, with just a tiny amount of glucose sugar. That small amount of glucose isn't enough to taste sweet, but over very long cooking times, or in preserved eggs, like 1,000-year eggs, it can actually participate in non-enzymatic browning reactions.
Browning in the white.
Yeah, causing the white to turn translucent and even brownish. The white's main role is structural, providing support and cushioning for the yolk.
Now, eggs are used in so many dishes, often with milk, cream, and sugar. How do those additions change things? How do they affect the egg?
Essentially, they dilute the concentration of the egg proteins. This dilution raises the temperature at which those proteins will begin to coagulate and thicken, resulting in a more delicate and tender final structure.
Okay, so they cook slower, kind of.
They set at a higher temperature, yeah. Sugar also has a similar effect on protein coagulation temperatures. This is why custards and eggnog, which contain a higher proportion of milk, cream, and sugar relative to eggs, have such a smooth and creamy texture compared to, say, a frittata, where the egg protein concentration is much higher.
Right.
The proteins from a single egg have to spread out more within the liquid, leading to a softer set. It's a similar principle to how adding water to paint makes it spread more thinly.
Makes sense why a custard is so much smoother than a scrambled egg.
Speaking of cooking eggs, why do some crack so easily when hard-boiled? And why are some such a pain to peel? That's always annoying.
Yeah, cracking during boiling is often due to rapid and uneven heating that creates thermal shock. The different parts of the egg expand at different rates. Gentle heating, starting in cold water and bringing it slowly just below boiling point, is generally best to minimize cracking.
Okay, start cold. As for peeling, very fresh eggs tend to have a lower pH in their albumin, which causes it to adhere tightly to the inner shell membrane. Older eggs, as they lose carbon dioxide through the shell, have a more alkaline pH, around 9.2, which makes them peel much more easily.
Ah, so older eggs are better for boiling.
For peeling, yes. If you only have super fresh eggs and want them to peel nicely, adding a bit of baking soda to the cooking water can increase its alkalinity and help loosen that membrane.
Oh, the baking soda trick.
Yeah, though it can slightly enhance that sulfurous aroma that sometimes develops in cooked eggs.
Okay.
Cooking fresh eggs a bit longer and then immediately plunging them into ice water to cool rapidly can also help the shell contract and separate from the albumin.
Interesting tips for the kitchen. What about pastry cream? It seems like a delicate balance to get it thick without it turning into, scrambled eggs.
Pastry cream relies on the protective action of sugar, eggs, and a starch thickener, usually flour or cornstarch, all mixed together before adding scalded milk.
Okay, mix first.
Yeah, this initial combination helps to physically separate the egg proteins. preventing them from clumping together too quickly when heated. Boiling the mixture is actually crucial for properly gelatinizing the starch, which is the primary thickening agent, and also for inactivating that sneaky yolk amylase.
Ah, kill the amylase.
Right, preventing it from breaking down the starch and thinning the cream. So it's a strategic combination of ingredients and heat application.
So it's a race between thickening and thinning, with heat being the key but needing to be controlled. Makes sense. And then you have the magic of egg white foams, meringues, soufflés.
Yeah.
How does that airy structure happen? It seems like magic.
Well, whisking egg whites vigorously introduces air, creating bubbles, and simultaneously stretches the protein molecules. Some parts of these proteins are hydrophilic, they love water, while others are hydrophobic, they avoid it. As you whisk, the proteins unfold and rearrange themselves around the air bubbles, with their water-loving parts facing the liquid and their water-avoiding parts facing the air inside the bubbles. This creates a delicate, interconnected network that traps both water and air, forming the foam.
Right, a structure builds up.
Exactly. Heat then sets this structure permanently by denaturing the proteins further, causing them to solidify and bond together, reinforcing the airy matrix.
It's like building a delicate protein scaffolding. Cool. And soufflés.
Right.
They seem so temperamental. What's the secret to a good rise?
The consistency of the base is absolutely crucial. It needs to be cohesive enough to provide structure and support the delicate egg white foam, but soft enough to allow for even mixing without deflating the whites too much.
Okay, a balancing act.
Yeah. If the base is too liquid, it won't have enough internal strength to rise and will likely collapse. If it's too stiff, the airy foam won't incorporate properly and the soufflé won't achieve much lift. The base itself can be surprisingly varied. It could be as simple as whisked yolks and sugar for a light sweet soufflé, or you can incorporate sugar syrups for stability, purees of fruits or vegetables for flavor and moisture, or even pureed cooked or raw meat or fish for savory versions.
Meat soufflés, wow.
Yeah. If the puree contains raw proteins, those will also coagulate during cooking, adding even more structural integrity to the final dish.
Soufflé, a testament to the power of carefully manipulated egg proteins. Fascinating. Okay, let's switch gears to something a bit heartier. Meat. It's such a fundamental part of so many diets.
The transformation of muscle into what we call meat is a fascinating process involving several key stages. Slaughter, the onset of rigor mortis, which is muscle stiffening, then aging to improve tenderness and flavor, cutting into various portions, packaging, and of course the eventual spoilage if not properly handled and stored through methods like refrigeration or even irradiation. It's fascinating how our language itself carries a historical imprint. The Norman conquest in England led to the adoption of French terms for cooked meats, while the Anglo-Saxon names for the live animals often remain.
Oh yeah, like what?
Think of ox becoming beef, sheep becoming mutton, and pig becoming pork.
That's a great historical tidbit. Never thought about that. What were the nutritional advantages of meat for our early ancestors?
Meat provided a highly concentrated source of essential nutrients, like complete protein, easily absorbable iron, heme iron, and several crucial B vitamins, particularly B12, along with energy from fats. This nutrient density, coupled with a varied diet and an active hunter-gatherer lifestyle, likely contributed significantly to their health and development. Interestingly, the shift towards agriculture and a greater reliance on starchy grains, while providing a more stable food supply, actually led to a relative decline in the intake of some of these key nutrients in the human diet, at least in certain populations.
So meat played a vital role in our early development. Makes sense. Now, when we look at a piece of meat, we see different colors, white meat and dark meat. What's the difference there? What's actually happening?
That color difference reflects the predominant types of muscle fibers within that particular muscle. Dark meat is characterized by a higher concentration of the oxygen-storing protein myoglobin and a greater number of mitochondria, which are the energy-producing organelles within the cells.
Okay, more oxygen stuff.
Right. These are slow-twitch muscle fibers designed for sustained activity and requiring more oxygen. White meat, on the other hand, has less myoglobin and fewer mitochondria, and is composed mainly of fast-twitch muscle fibers, which are adapted for quick bursts of energy.
Fast versus slow.
Exactly. The proportion of these fiber types in a muscle depends directly on how the animal uses that muscle. Think about a chicken. Its breast muscles, used for brief, powerful flight, are predominantly white.
Right.
While its legs, used for walking and scratching, have a higher proportion of dark meat. Migratory birds, like ducks that fly long distances, have predominantly red breast muscles because they need that sustained oxygen supply.
Ah, makes sense.
You can even see this difference in animals like frogs, where the powerful jumping legs are dark meat and the less used back muscles are paler.
So the animal's lifestyle really shapes the meat we eat. Cool. And what about that meaty flavor we all recognize? Where does that come from?
That characteristic meaty flavor is a complex combination of basic taste sensations, savory, umami notes from amino acids and peptides, and a rich and volatile aroma that develops as the proteins and other energy-generating molecules within the muscle fibers break down during cooking.
Okay, breakdown products.
Yeah, these breakdown products include a wide array of compounds that contribute to the overall flavor profile. The meat pigments, myoglobin and hemoglobin, also play a role in the color changes we observe. Freshly cut meat often has a purplish hue due to deoxymyoglobin.
Right, that deep color.
When exposed to oxygen, it turns that bright red color we associate with fresh beef as the myoglobin binds with oxygen. Further oxidation leads to the brownish metmyoglobin.
Those color changes in the grocery store make a lot more sense now.
Definitely.
We see all these different grades of beef, prime, choice, select. What do those signify? Is it just about fat?
Those are primarily U.S. quality grades assigned to beef based largely on the amount of intramuscular fat or marbling present within the muscle tissue. Prime grade has the highest degree of marbling, followed by choice, and then select has the least.
Okay, prime is most marbled.
Right. This fat content significantly impacts the tenderness, juiciness, and flavor of the cooked beef. Ground beef, on the other hand, can have a wide range of fat percentages, which will also affect its cooking properties and taste. There's also a growing consumer interest in grass-fed beef, which tends to be leaner than grain-finished beef and can have a more pronounced, sometimes grassier, flavor profile.
So fat equals flavor and a higher grade, generally speaking.
Got it. Now, cooking meat can be tricky. How do we avoid ending up with something tough and dry, especially with leaner cuts these days?
Yeah, the margin for error in cooking meat, especially with the leaner broods of animals that are common today, is actually narrower than it might have been in the past. Muscle fibers contract and lose moisture as they heat up, and overcooking exacerbates this, leading to toughness and dryness.
Right. Techniques that help to tenderize the meat before cooking, such as physical methods like pounding, scoring, or cutting against the grain, or enzymatic methods like marinating, can help. They help break down those muscle fibers and connective tissues, minimizing the necessary cooking time and reducing the risk of dryness.
What about those long, slow cooking methods like braising and stewing? They seem to magically transform tough cuts into something amazing.
Exactly. Braising and stewing are fantastic for tougher cuts of meat that are high in connective tissue, like collagen. These methods involve first browning the meat at a higher temperature to develop rich, Maillard reaction flavors on the surface.
Get that sear first.
Right. Then the meat is cooked slowly in a flavorful liquid at a relatively low temperature for an extended period. This gentle, moist heat allows the tough collagen to gradually break down into gelatin, which imparts a wonderful richness and tenderness to the meat and the cooking liquid.
Ah, collagen to gelatin.
Yeah. Allowing the meat to cool in the cooking liquid after it's done also helps it to reabsorb some of that moisture, further enhancing its tenderness.
And what's that kind of stale flavor you sometimes get in leftover meat? The dreaded warmed-over flavor. What causes that?
Ugh, yeah. That off flavor is primarily caused by the oxidation of unsaturated fatty acids present in the cooked meat. It's a process that is accelerated by exposure to oxygen and the presence of iron from myoglobin.
Okay, fat oxidizing?
Pretty much. Poultry and pork, which tend to have a higher proportion of unsaturated fats in their tissues, are more susceptible to developing this warmed-over flavor. Interestingly, cured meats, like ham and bacon, are less prone to this because the nitrite used in the curing process acts as an antioxidant, helping to prevent that fat oxidation.
Good to know. Nitrites have a protective effect there. Now, what about things like pâtés and terrines? They seem like a different way of handling meat altogether.
Pâtés and terrines are essentially sophisticated meatloaf-like preparations, you could say. They are composed of ground or finely pureed meat, often combined with fat for richness and moisture, as well as various flavorings like herbs, spices, and sometimes wine or spirits. These mixtures are then typically cooked gently in a water bath, which provides a more even and controlled heat until the proteins in the meat coagulate and set the mixture into a cohesive mass.
Like a savory custard almost.
Kind of, yeah. Because they are often served cool or even chilled, pâtés and terrines tend to be seasoned more assertively to compensate for the muted flavor perception at lower temperatures. Foie gras terrines, being particularly delicate, are often cooked at even lower temperatures to maintain their characteristic rosy pink color and prevent excessive rendering of the fat.
So it's about that gentle heat and the setting of the proteins within a flavorful matrix. Interesting. And then you have the whole world of cured meats, prosciutto, salami. It's like they undergo this amazing transformation, isn't it?
Curing meats with salt, and sometimes with the addition of nitrates and nitrites, is a time-honored preservation technique. It not only inhibits microbial growth, but also dramatically alters the flavor and texture of the meat over time.
Right, it's preservation, but also flavor creation.
Exactly. The salt draws out moisture, concentrating the remaining flavors and inhibiting spoilage. Nitrates and nitrites contribute to the characteristic color of cured meats, and also play a role in flavor development and preventing the growth of certain bacteria. Dry-cured hams, such as prosciutto, serrano, Bayonne ham, and American country hams, undergo a slow process of salting, drying, and aging for months or even years.
Wow, years sometimes.
Yeah. During this time, complex enzymatic reactions occur, breaking down proteins and fats into a vast array of flavorful compounds. It's a remarkable transformation, really, akin to the aging of cheese. Taking something relatively simple and, through careful control of environmental conditions and time, turning it into a highly prized delicacy with intense and nuanced flavors.
From fresh muscle to these intensely flavored creations, meat has a fascinating story. Definitely. Let's dive into the waters now and talk about fish and shellfish. It feels like a whole different world.
The narrative of global fisheries is indeed a compelling and, at times, concerning one. We've gone from a historical perspective of seemingly inexhaustible ocean resources, famously espoused by figures like T.H. Huxley back in the 19th century, to the current reality of significantly depleted fish stocks.
And the ecological challenges posed by bycatch, the unintentional capture of non-target species.
Yeah, bycatch is a huge issue.
It is. In this context, aquaculture, or fish farming, has emerged as an increasingly important alternative for providing seafood. Farmed varieties like trout, catfish, salmon, and shrimp are becoming widely available now.
It's definitely a critical issue for the future of our food supply. What about some of the potential dangers lurking in seafood, like shellfish poisoning? You hear about that sometimes.
Right. Shellfish poisoning is often associated with the consumption of filter-feeding shellfish, like mussels, clams, and oysters, that have accumulated toxins produced by certain types of microscopic algae called dinoflagellates.
Okay, algae toxins. Yeah. These toxins can't be seen, smelled, or cooked out, and they can cause various neurological or gastrointestinal illnesses in humans. Another type of poisoning to be aware of is ciguatera poisoning, which occurs from eating certain reef fish that have accumulated toxins up the food chain after consuming dinoflagellates. Public health agencies often monitor shellfish harvesting areas to try and prevent contaminated products from reaching consumers. But there's always a degree of risk associated with consuming wild-caught shellfish, especially if harvested privately.
Always good to be aware of that, definitely. Now, why do ocean fish and freshwater fish taste so different? Is there a scientific reason?
Yeah, a key reason for the flavor difference lies in how these fish regulate the osmotic balance between their internal fluids and their external environment, osmoregulation. Ocean fish live in a salty environment and need to actively prevent dehydration. They achieve this in part by accumulating certain organic compounds, including amino acids and amines, in their tissues, which can contribute to their distinct flavor profile. Shellfish, in particular, are rich in flavorful free amino acids.
Right.
Freshwater fish, on the other hand, live in a less salty environment and need to prevent excess water from entering their bodies. Some freshwater species rely more on a largely tasteless amino oxide called TMAO, trimethylamine oxide, and in some cases, urea for osmoregulation.
TMAO.
The issue of TMAO is that once the fish dies, bacteria begin to break it down into TMA-trimethylamine, which has that characteristic fishy odor.
Ah, that's the smell.
That's the smell. Similarly, urea can be converted to ammonia, which also has an unpleasant smell. This breakdown process is why truly fresh fish should have a very mild aroma, while an intense fishy smell is a sign of spoilage.
That explains that fishy smell. Finally. What about the texture of fish? It's so much more delicate than meat, usually.
The delicate texture of fish muscle is largely due to its unique layered structure. Fish muscle is arranged in short segments called myotomes, which are separated by thin sheets of connective tissue called myosepta.
Myotomes and myosepta.
Yeah. Unlike land animals, fish have much less of the tough cross-linked collagen that contributes to the firmer texture of meat. Additionally, fish muscle fibers themselves are generally shorter and thinner than those in mammals.
Okay.
This structural difference means that fish cooks much more quickly and is more prone to flaking and drying out if overcooked.
So it's a more fragile structure to begin with. Got it. And what about the fat content in different kinds of fish? It varies quite a bit, doesn't it, from lean to oily?
Absolutely. Fish can range from very lean to quite oily. Oily fish, such as herring, mackerel, and sardines, have a high fat content, often rich in omega-3 fatty acids, and tend to have a more pronounced and sometimes stronger flavor. Leaner fish, like cod, haddock, and sole, have a much lower fat content and a milder, more delicate flavor. Salmon is an interesting case. While it's considered a fatty fish, its characteristic pink color comes from the pigment astaxanthin, which it gets from its diet of crustaceans.
Astaxanthin.
Yeah. There's some speculation that astaxanthin might also contribute to the distinct aroma of salmon, though this is still being researched. Trout and char are mostly freshwater fish closely related to salmon. Farm varieties often have a pinkish hue due to astaxanthin added to their feed, mimicking their wild cousin's diet, and their fat content can vary depending on their rearing conditions.
So diet really influences both color and potentially flavor. Interesting. What about when you buy fish? Sometimes it feels firmer than other times. Is that rigor mortis at play, like in meat?
Yes, just like in land animals, fish and shellfish undergo rigor mortis after death, that temporary stiffening of the muscles as they deplete their ATP reserves. The duration and intensity of rigor mortis can vary depending on factors like the species, handling, and temperature. Fish cooked before rigor has fully set in can sometimes have a slightly rubbery or chewy texture. In some cultures, however, very fresh, pre-rigor fish is actually prized for certain preparations.
Interesting cultural preferences.
Yeah. Once rigor has passed, the muscle fibers relax and the texture becomes more tender.
Now, when it comes to cooking fish, it seems like the key is speed and avoiding overcooking, given that delicate structure.
Precisely. Because of the delicate connective tissue and the relatively short muscle fibers, fish doesn't require long cooking times to become tender. In fact, overcooking quickly leads to dryness and the loss of that desirable flaky texture. The goal is to cook it just until the center is opaque and it flakes easily with a fork.
Just until it flakes.
Right. The fragility of cooked fish also means it needs to be handled with care to prevent it from falling apart. Gentle cooking methods like steaming, poaching, or a quick sauté are often preferred.
I've heard of mousselines and quenelles. What are those in the world of fish? They sound fancy.
They are quite refined, yeah.
Yeah.
Mousselines and quenelles are delicate preparations made from finely minced or pureed raw fish. The fish is typically mixed with a binder, such as egg whites, and an enriching ingredient like heavy cream, along with salt and sometimes a small amount of starch for added structure.
Okay, like a fish paste?
Kind of. The mixture is then often shaped into small ovals or other forms and gently cooked, usually by poaching. The incorporation of air during the mixing process creates a light and almost airy texture.
Sounds very delicate. What about shellfish? Is their muscle structure similar to fish, shrimp, lobster, clams?
Most shellfish, including crustaceans like shrimp and lobsters and mollusks like clams and scallops, do have striated skeletal muscle, similar to that found in fish. Crustaceans, such as shrimp, have a distinct anatomy with a cephalothorax, that's the head and thorax fused together, and a separate abdomen or tail, which contains the majority of the edible muscle.
Right, the tail is what we usually eat.
Exactly. Shrimp farming has become a significant global industry, providing a large proportion of the shrimp consumed worldwide. Interestingly, the texture of crustacean muscle tends to hold up better to freezing and thawing compared to fish, although the quality can still be affected by slow freezing in domestic freezers.
That's good to know if you're buying frozen shrimp. And what about that distinct nutty or almost popcorn-like aroma you get when you cook crustaceans? Shrimp especially.
Yes. That characteristic aroma is a fascinating result of Maillard reactions, the same browning reactions that occur in meat, but happening at lower temperatures in crustaceans.
Lower temps, why?
This is likely due to the high concentration of free amino acids, particularly glycine, and naturally occurring sugars in their muscle tissue. These compounds readily react when heated, producing that appealing, nutty, and slightly sweet fragrance.
So a unique chemical reaction giving them that signature smell. Cool. What about mollusks like clams and oysters? Their texture seems so varied from slick to chewy.
The texture of mollusks is largely determined by the size and function of their adductor muscles, the muscles they use to open and close their shells. In scallops, this large adductor muscle is the primary edible part and has a tender, slightly chewy texture when cooked.
Right, the scallop itself.
Exactly. Clams, mussels, and oysters have a more varied texture, often described as slick and sometimes slightly crunchy when raw, and becoming chewier when cooked, depending on the species and the cooking method. The overall texture is influenced by the specific arrangement and composition of their muscle fibers and connective tissues.
A whole world of textures in the shellfish aisle. And just like with other foods, there are preserved forms of fish and shellfish, right? Beyond just freezing or canning.
Absolutely. Fermentation has been used for centuries to preserve fish and shellfish in various Asian culinary traditions, resulting in products with complex and often intensely savory flavors. Unfermented methods, such as the salting and sugar curing used for gravlax, or the meticulous preparation of sushi and sashimi, also serve to preserve fish while highlighting its fresh, natural flavors.
Okay, we've journeyed through the animal kingdom. Milk, eggs, meat, fish, shellfish. Now let's step into the vibrant and maybe sometimes confusing world of plants.
It's a fascinating paradox, isn't it, that we humans often enjoy the presence of certain plant toxins in our food. Think of the sharp pungency of mustard, the fiery heat of pepper, or the tear-inducing effects of onions.
Yeah, why do we like things that hurt us a little?
Well, it's believed that our attraction to the complex flavors of herbs and spices may have evolutionary roots connected to this ability to appreciate, in controlled amounts, compounds that might otherwise be considered repellent, like a little thrill for the taste buds.
It's like our taste buds have a rebellious streak. And why are ripe fruits so darn delicious? It's not just a happy accident, is it? There's a reason.
Not at all. The development of deliciousness in ripe fruits is a direct result of evolutionary pressures related to plant reproduction. Flowers attract pollinators, and ripe fruits are specifically designed to be appealing to animals who will consume them and then disperse the indigestible seeds, ideally far from the parent plant.
Right, spread the seeds.
Exactly. This is why plants invest energy in loading ripe fruits with sugars for sweetness, organic acids for tanginess, a complex array of volatile compounds for pleasant aromas, and vibrant pigments for visual appeal, all to attract those seed dispersers.
Nature's way of ensuring the next generation.
Smart. What were some of the earliest plants that humans cultivated? Where did agriculture start, plant-wise?
Well, it varied by region. In Europe and the Near East, early cultivated plants included staples like wheat, barley, lentils, peas, and various root vegetables such as turnips and onions, as well as leafy greens like cabbage. In Central America, you had the famous three sisters, corn, squash, and beans, along with tomatoes and avocados. Potatoes were key in the Andean region of South America.
Right.
Different regions around the world domesticated their own sets of staple crops, from rice and millet in Asia to yams and sorghum in Africa. Early flavorings were also cultivated, including mustard, ginger, and chili peppers. It's amazing to think about these ancient connections between humans and plants. What gives raw fruits and vegetables their varied textures? Crispness, softness, etc.
The texture of raw fruits and vegetables is primarily determined by the structural components of their cell walls. These are largely composed of tough cellulose fibers embedded within a semi-solid matrix of pectin and other polysaccharides.
Okay, cell walls.
Yeah. And the turgor pressure, or water content within these cells, also plays a significant role in maintaining rigidity and crispness. The way these cellular structures fracture and deform when we chew determines whether a food is perceived as crisp, soft, mealy, or chewy.
So it's like a cellular architecture at play.
Yep.
Fascinating. And we see such a rainbow of colors in the plant world. What's the science behind those pigments? Green, red, yellow?
The vibrant colors of plants come from various pigment molecules. Chlorophylls are responsible for green hues and are crucial for photosynthesis. Carotenoids produce yellow, orange, and red colors and also act as antioxidants. They are fat-soluble and generally quite stable during cooking.
Okay, carotenoids are tough.
Generally, yeah. Anthocyanins create red, blue, and purple colors and are water-soluble, making them more susceptible to changes in pH and heat.
Ah, more delicate.
Right. For example, acidic conditions can intensify their red color, while alkaline conditions can shift them towards blue or purple. Chlorophyll's green color can sometimes become more intense briefly during cooking as trapped gases are released from the plant tissues.
Oh, that bright green flash.
Exactly. It's a good general observation that darker green vegetables tend to be richer in beneficial carotenoids. These pigments serve various functions in the plant, from capturing light energy to signaling pollinators and protecting against UV damage, and they also provide health benefits when we consume them.
Color isn't just for show, it's packed with function. And then you have the incredible complexity of aromas in fruits, vegetables, herbs, and spices. It's mind-boggling sometimes.
It truly is remarkable. Each fruit, Vegetable, herb, and spice boasts its own unique and often incredibly complex blend of volatile organic compounds. We're talking about dozens, sometimes even hundreds, of different molecules contributing to the overall aroma profile.
Hundreds. Wow.
Yeah. While a few dominant compounds usually create the most recognizable notes, it's the intricate interplay of all these different molecules, often in minute concentrations, that gives each plant its characteristic scent. This combination of specificity and complexity explains why seemingly unrelated foods can share certain aromatic elements, or why particular combinations of ingredients can create such harmonious flavor pairings.
It's like a symphony of scents. We touched on how cooking can change the color of green vegetables. What about other plant pigments, like those carotenoids and anthocyanins?
Cooking can indeed alter the appearance of other plant pigments. Carotenoids, being fat-soluble and relatively stable, may become slightly more vibrant and bioavailable upon heating as the cell walls break down, releasing them.
So cooking can make them brighter.
Sometimes, yes. Anthocyanins, however, are more labile, more delicate. Heat can sometimes degrade them, leading to a dulling of their color. The pH of the cooking water can also significantly impact anthocyanins. For instance, adding a bit of vinegar, an acid, might help to retain a brighter red color in boiled red cabbage.
It's like a culinary chemistry experiment every time we cook. Fermentation is another powerful way to transform plants, isn't it? Pickles, sauerkraut.
Absolutely. Fermenting fruits and vegetables, often through the simple methods of dry salting or brining submerging in a salt solution, encourages the growth of beneficial microbes, primarily lactic acid bacteria.
Lactic acid bacteria again.
Yeah, they're everywhere. These microbes consume sugars in the plant matter and produce lactic acid, which not only acts as a natural preservative by lowering the pH, but also creates a range of characteristic tangy, sour, and often more complex flavors. Think about the transformation of cucumbers into pickles or cabbage into sauerkraut. Even something like olives, which are naturally very bitter due to compounds called oleuropein, undergo a debittering process, often using alkaline solutions like wood ash or lye, followed by fermentation with lactic acid bacteria to develop their characteristic briny flavor and texture.
From bitter to briny and delicious. Amazing. And what about the sweet side of the plant world, jams and preserves? How did those start?
The earliest forms of sweet fruit preserves likely involved submerging fruits in honey. The discovery that cooking fruit with a concentrated sweetener, like honey or later sugar, created unique textures and prevented spoilage led to the development of jams, jellies, and fruit butters.
Okay.
The introduction of refined cane sugar from Asia to Europe was a significant turning point, as its purity and neutral flavor allowed the natural flavors of the fruit to shine through more clearly. Early forms included fruit cheese, which were thick, solid preserves, and clear jellies made from strained fruit juice and sugar.
So sugar revolutionized fruit preservation. Makes sense. Let's zoom in on some specific plants. Onions, they make us cry, but add so much flavor. What's the deal with them?
Well, the Anglo-Saxon word for onion actually meant spear leek, highlighting its early association with the leek family. The characteristic pungent flavor and aroma of onions are due to a variety of volatile sulfur-containing compounds that are released when the onion cells are damaged by cutting or crushing.
Sulfur compounds, that's the key.
That's the key. These same sulfur compounds also play a key role in the browning reactions that occur when onions are cooked, contributing those desirable sweet and caramelized notes. Spring onions, harvested before the bulb fully matures, are milder and more perishable, because they haven't developed the same concentration of these compounds as storage onions, which are harvested when mature and have a longer shelf life.
Right, storage onions are stronger.
Yeah. Interestingly, so-called sweet onions, like Vidalia or Walla Walla onions, are typically varieties grown in soils that are naturally low in sulfur, resulting in a milder flavor and reduced pungency.
So even the soil affects the onion's personality. Wow. What about some more exotic plant stems like bamboo shoots and hearts of palm?
Bamboo shoots and hearts of palm are both derived from the stems of tropical plants and offer distinct textures and subtle flavors. Bamboo shoots, depending on the species, can contain bitter cyanide compounds in their raw state, which is why they typically need to be boiled or otherwise processed before consumption.
Cyanide. Yikes.
Yeah, needs careful preparation. Once cooked, they have a characteristically firm and slightly crisp texture that they tend to retain even after further cooking. Hearts of palm, harvested from the inner core of certain palm trees, have a more delicate and slightly fibrous texture with a mild, almost nutty flavor.
Interesting textural contrasts. What about the diverse world of Asian cabbages? bok choy, napa.
Vegetables like bok choy, napa cabbage, tatsoi, mizuna, mibuna, while having distinct appearances and culinary uses, all belong to the same species as the common European turnip and mustard greens. Surprising, right?
Really? All related to turnips.
Yeah. They are characterized by their relatively quick cooking times, often prominent white or light green midribs, and a range of milder flavors compared to more tightly headed cabbages. Their different leaf shapes and textures lend themselves to various cooking methods, from stir-frying to salads.
A testament to the diversity within a single species. That's amazing. And I always get confused by cucumbers and their relatives. Gherkins, Armenian cucumbers?
Yeah, it can be confusing. The vegetable, commonly known as Armenian cucumber, is actually a type of elongated melon.
A melon, okay.
True gherkins, on the other hand, are small, prickly fruits from a different species, a relative of the cucumber that is native to Africa, and it's typically used for pickling.
Right, pickling gherkins.
And then there's the bitter gourd, also known as bitter melon, which is prized in many Asian cuisines for its intensely bitter flavor due to the presence of compounds called cucurbitacins. These compounds are also being studied for their potential health benefits.
It's a botanical maze out there. Let's talk about corn. It comes in so many varieties, especially in terms of sweetness.
The sweetness and texture of fresh corn kernels are largely determined by the relative proportions of different carbohydrate molecules. They contain primarily sugars, complex polysaccharides, and starch. Standard sweet corn varieties have a higher sugar content than field corn or dent corn, which is grown mainly for animal feed and processed foods.
Okay.
Super sweet corn varieties have been bred to retain their sugar content for a longer period after harvest, resulting in a noticeably sweeter taste and often a slightly more tender texture.
That explains why some corn is so much sweeter than others, even off the cob. What about the mysterious world of mushrooms and truffles? Fungi fun.
Mushrooms and truffles are both fungi, but they differ significantly in their growth habits and flavor profiles. Wild mushrooms can be either saprophytic, meaning they decompose organic matter, or mycorrhizal, forming symbiotic relationships with the roots of trees. Truffles are exclusively mycorrhizal and are highly prized for their intense and often volatile aromas. Black truffles are often described as having earthy and sometimes slightly sulfurous notes, while white truffles possess a more pungent and garlicky aroma. The flavor of white truffles is generally more delicate and heat-sensitive, making them best enjoyed raw or very lightly heated.
So different ways to appreciate their unique flavors. Good to know. Now let's delve into the sweet realm of fruits properly. They're designed to be eaten raw, you said earlier, for seed dispersal.
Exactly. Fruits have evolved to be appealing in their raw state, containing sugars for energy, organic acids for tanginess, a diverse array of volatile compounds for enticing aromas, and vibrant pigments to attract animals for seed dispersal. Fruits are often categorized as either climacteric or non-climacteric.
Climacteric, what's that mean?
Climacteric fruits, such as apples, pears, and bananas, continue to ripen after they have been harvested due to a burst of ethylene gas production. They get sweeter and softer off.
Yeah, they keep ripening.
Right. Non-climacteric fruits, like berries, cherries, and citrus fruits, ripen primarily on the plant and generally don't improve significantly in flavor or sweetness after picking.
Ah, so pick them when they're ready.
Exactly. This distinction is important for understanding how to store and handle different types of fruit for optimal quality.
That makes sense for planning your grocery shopping. Let's look at some common fruit families, starting with pome fruits. Apples, pears.
Pome fruits, which include apples, pears, and quinces, are characterized by having a core containing the seeds and a fleshy outer part that develops from the flower's hypanthium, the base of the flower surrounding the ovaries. They are typically climacteric fruits and, in general, store relatively well under cool conditions. Pears are often harvested when mature but still firm, and then allowed to ripen at room temperature to achieve their best flavor and texture.
Good to know for keeping them at their best. Ripened pears on the counter. What about stone fruits? Peaches, plums, cherries.
Stone fruits, or drupes, such as apricots, cherries, peaches, and plums, are characterized by having a hard, stony pit or endocarp surrounding the seed. Apricots derive much of their flavor from a complex mix of volatile compounds, including terpenes and lactones, which contribute to their sweet and slightly floral notes. They are well suited to drying, often with sulfur dioxide treatment to preserve their color and prevent spoilage.
Right, dried apricots.
Yeah. Peaches and nectarines, which are genetically very similar, considered varieties of the same species, come in both white-fleshed and yellow-fleshed types. as well as clingstone varieties where the flesh adheres tightly to the pit, and freestone varieties where it separates easily.
Clingstone versus freestone, right?
Their aromatic flavor profile is largely due to various lactones, with some varieties also exhibiting a characteristic clove-like note from the compound eugenol.
So much flavor packed into these fruits. And then there's the bright and zesty citrus family, oranges, lemons.
The citrus family, including oranges, lemons, grapefruit, limes, and mandarins, originated in Southeast Asia and has since spread globally, becoming incredibly important agricultural crops. Their characteristic taste is a result of a complex interplay of citric acid, which provides the tartness, various sugars for sweetness, bitter phenolic compounds, and, surprisingly, the savory amino acid glutamate.
Glutamate.
In citrus, which contributes to a subtle umami note. Unlike climacteric fruits, citrus fruits do not sweeten significantly after they are picked, so they're typically harvested when fully ripe.
That explains why you can't just leave a lemon on the counter to get sweeter. It won't happen. Now, herbs and spices add so much complexity to our food. Where do their unique flavors come from? It's those volatile compounds again, Riz.
It's exactly. The distinctive flavors and aromas of herbs and spices originate from a vast array of volatile essential oils and other bioactive compounds that are concentrated in different parts of the plant leaves, seeds, roots, bark, or fruits. For example, the warm, spicy aroma of clove comes primarily from the compound eugenol. Anise and fennel owe their licorice-like scent to anihol.
Right.
Limonu contributes the characteristic citrusy note found in citrus peels, caraway seeds, and celery seeds. The fiery heat of chili peppers comes from capsaicin. The method and duration of cooking, as well as the particle size of the herb or spice whole, crushed, ground, will significantly influence how these flavor compounds are extracted and contribute to the final dish.
So a delicate dance of extraction and transformation. Makes sense. Any interesting examples of aromatic plants you want to highlight?
Well, angelica, with its somewhat bittersweet and slightly piney and citrusy aroma, has been used both culinarily and medicinally. Celery's distinctive fresh and slightly peppery flavor comes from a group of compounds called phthalides, which are also found in walnuts, contributing to their slightly bitter note.
Celery and walnuts share something.
Yeah. Fennel has a prominent anihol content, giving it that characteristic sweet, licorice-like aroma and flavor similar to anise. Ajwain seeds possess a strong, thyme-like aroma due to the presence of thymol, while anise itself has that dominant sweet anihol note.
It's like a whole pharmacy of flavors in the plant kingdom. Amazing. Even something as simple as water can affect flavor, can't it? Especially in drinks like tea and coffee.
Yes, absolutely. The mineral content, and particularly the alkalinity of tap water, can significantly impact the flavor extraction and overall taste of brewed beverages like tea and dark roasted coffee. High alkalinity can neutralize some of the natural acids in these drinks, resulting in a flatter or less vibrant flavor.
So hard water can make bad coffee.
It can make different coffee, yeah. This effect can sometimes be mitigated by adding a very small amount of a mild food acid, such as tartaric acid, to the brewing water.
A little water chemistry can go a long way. Let's talk about tea and coffee themselves. They have such complex flavors developed through processing.
Tea, derived from the leaves of the Camellia sinensis plant, undergoes different processing methods that dramatically alter its chemical composition and resulting flavor profile. Green tea is typically not fermented, or oxidized rather, preserving its more grassy and sometimes slightly bitter notes.
Okay.
Oolong tea undergoes partial oxidation, leading to a wider range of flavors, including floral, fruity, and toasted notes. Black tea is fully oxidized, resulting in its characteristic robust and often malty or even slightly spicy flavors.
Green, oolong, black. All from the same plant, just processed differently.
Exactly. Coffee flavor development is heavily reliant on the roasting process, which transforms numerous compounds within the coffee bean, creating hundreds of different aroma and flavor molecules. The way these compounds are then extracted during brewing, influenced by factors like grind size, water temperature, and brewing method, has a profound impact on the final cup.
From leaf or bean to brew, so many factors influence the final cup. What about the seeds and grains that form the base of so many diets? Rice, wheat, corn.
The structure of seeds and grains typically includes an embryo or germ, which is rich in oils, enzymes, and nutrients. It contributes to flavor, but can also be prone to rancidity over time.
Right, the germ goes bad faster.
Yeah. The bulk of the seed is the storage tissue, or endosperm, composed primarily of carbohydrates, mainly starch, along with some protein and, in some cases, oil. The cell walls of grains are made of cellulose and other structural polysaccharides. Spelt, an ancient grain, is notable for its relatively high protein content and is used to produce grünkern, or green grain, which is harvested early and dried.
Okay.
Wheat varieties are broadly classified based on the hardness of their endosperm and their protein content, which dictates their suitability for different baked goods, bread, pastries, pasta. Rice varieties, such as indica and japonica, differ in their amylose and amylopectin starch content, which significantly affects their cooking characteristics. Think fluffy, long-grain indica versus stickier, short-grain japonica.
Starch makes a difference.
Big time. Rice milling, which removes the outer bran layers and the germ, increases its stability and shelf life, but also removes significant nutrients and some of its nutty flavor. Parboiled rice and quick cooking rice undergo specific pre-cooking processes to shorten their final cooking time. And of course, popcorn pops due to the buildup of steam pressure inside the kernel when heated.
Pop.
Yeah. Dry milled corn products such as grits, cornmeal, and corn flour also often have the hull and germ removed for improved stability and texture.
So even the seemingly simple grain has layers of complexity. Processing matters a lot. And then you have things like tofu and fermented soy products. Soybeans are so versatile.
Tofu, or bean curd, is made by coagulating soy milk and pressing the resulting curds. Its texture can be altered significantly by freezing, which changes its internal structure, and by pressing out more water to create a firmer consistency. Fermented bean curd, or soufflé, is a type of soy cheese that undergoes a mold ripening process, developing a strong and complex flavor.
Soy cheese, interesting.
Yeah. The fermentation of soybeans is also the basis for soy sauce and miso, where the action of Aspergillus mold, yeasts, and bacteria over extended periods creates a rich and umami-laden flavor profile. Tempeh and natto are other examples of fermented soybean products with distinct textures and flavors.
A whole world of flavor from soybeans. What about nuts? They're technically seeds, but they feel quite different from grains in how we use them.
Botanically speaking, only a limited number of fruits with a hard shell and a kernel where the shell doesn't split open are true nuts like acorns, hazelnuts, beechnuts, and chestnuts.
Oh, so peanuts aren't nuts.
Botanically, no, they're legumes.
Yeah.
But in common culinary usage, the term nut refers to a wider range of edible seeds with a relatively high oil content and a hard outer shell. They generally differ from grains and legumes by being larger, richer in fats, and often consumed raw or with minimal cooking. Walnuts are notable for their high omega-3 fatty acid content and their tendency for the oils to oxidize and become rancid, as well as their distinctive earthy aroma. Other related nuts include black walnuts, butternuts, and heart nuts.
So storage is key for those healthy fats in walnuts. Keep them cool. And we can't talk about grains, especially wheat, without mentioning the magic of gluten.
Gluten. Yes. It's a protein complex that forms when the proteins gluten and gliadin present in wheat flour are hydrated and worked, like during kneading. This network of gluten gives wheat dough its characteristic plasticity, allowing it to be shaped and stretched, and its elasticity, allowing it to spring back.
Stretch and spring.
Exactly. For successful bread making, accurately weighing ingredients is crucial for proper hydration and gluten development. Different types of wheat flour, high-protein bread flour, all-purpose, low-protein soft wheat flour, whole grain flour will result in different gluten development and ultimately different textures and flavors in baked goods.
Right. Different flours for different jobs.
Yeah. The autolyze method, a pre-mixing step where flour and water are combined and allowed to rest before other ingredients are added, can also enhance gluten development.
The science of bread is a deep dive in itself. So many variables. And what about the foundations of so many dishes sauces, from simple pan sauces to complex French ones?
French cuisine, in particular, famously elevated the art of sauce making. Culinary giants like Escoffier codified numerous classic sauces and established the concept of mother sauces as foundational building blocks.
Right, the mother sauces.
While professional kitchens often rely on meticulously prepared stocks and time-consuming reductions, simpler domestic sauce-making techniques, such as pan sauces created by deglazing a pan after sautéing, are also widely used and effective. Sauces are thickened through various means, using long-chain carbohydrate molecules like starch in a roux or slurry or gelatin, which form viscous networks in water, and the creation of jellies through the gelling properties of pectin or gelatin.
Okay, thickening with molecules.
Yeah. Another important thickening mechanism is the formation of emulsions, where tiny droplets of one liquid are dispersed within another, as seen in milk or mayonnaise. Interestingly, thickeners can sometimes reduce the perceived intensity of flavors by physically binding flavor molecules and slowing their movement.
Oh, so thicker isn't always more flavorful.
It can mute things slightly, yeah. Sauces thickened with gelatin, derived from the collagen in meat and fish bones, provide a rich mouthfeel. Basic pan sauces are often created by deglazing a pan with liquid and then reducing it to concentrate the flavors. Meticulously prepared meat stocks can be single, double, or even triple strength, with concentrated versions like glace de viande and demi-glace offering intense, meaty flavor and body.
Right, those super concentrated stocks.
Fish stock, or fumet, typically uses fish bones and aromatic vegetables and requires very fresh ingredients for a clean flavor. Vegetable purees can also thicken sauces, with the natural pectin and cellulose in the vegetables contributing to viscosity, and enzymes within the vegetables being either activated or deactivated by cooking, affecting their thickening power. Think of mole, a complex Mexican sauce based on a puree of chilies and seeds, achieving its characteristic suave consistency through this method.
Mole, great example.
Emulsions of oil and water, stabilized by emulsifiers, are another key category. Vinaigrettes are a simple example. Some sauces are thickened right at the end by whisking in cold butter, mounting with butter, which adds richness and a glossy sheen.
So many ways to create a flavorful base for a dish. Amazing variety. And finally, let's touch on the sweet ending sugar in confectionery. Candy, chocolate.
The history of sugar in confectionery is a long and fascinating one, evolving from the early use of naturally sweet substances like honey to the sophisticated techniques of modern sugar work. Different types of sugars and syrups, sucrose, table sugar, glucose, fructose, maple syrup, have varying degrees of relative sweetness.
Right. Fructose is sweeter than sucrose.
Exactly. The tendency of sucrose to crystallize is a fundamental property exploited in candy making, where controlling the size and formation of crystals is key to achieving different textures. Honey, an early and widely used sweetener, has its own distinct flavor profile depending on the floral source of the nectar. It's interesting to note that European honeybees were introduced to the New World. Native stingless bees also produced honey, albeit with different characteristics. Corn syrups and high fructose corn syrup are produced through the enzymatic breakdown of cornstarch. Crystalline fructose has a high degree of sweetness, but lower solubility than sucrose. The texture of candy is largely determined by the concentration of sugar and water, as well as the final temperature reached during cooking. The addition of glucose, or corn syrup, can interfere with sucrose crystallization, resulting in smoother textures.
Prevent grittiness.
Right. Chocolate, made from the fermented and roasted beans of the cacao tree, is a remarkable food with a complex composition of cocoa solids, cocoa butter, and sugar. The specific proportions of these components define different types of chocolate, like 70% cacao, dark chocolate, milk chocolate, and white chocolate.
Percentage matters.
It does. And even seemingly unrelated processes like winemaking, where Brettanomyces yeast can contribute unique, sometimes barnyard-like aromas.
Right.
And beer brewing, where hops provide bitterness and aroma, involve fascinating chemistry. The malting process of barley for beer production unlocks enzymes that convert starches to sugars. Different beer styles showcase the diversity of flavor achieved through fermentation. Think of the clove and banana notes of German wheat beers, often attributed to the yeast Tortospora del Brucchi.
Yeast makes flavor.
Big time. The history of distilled spirits, from medicinal aquavitae to beverages enjoyed for pleasure, encompasses a range of production methods, giving us brandy from wine, gin flavored with botanicals, rum from sugarcane. Tequila and mezcal from agave have distinctive smoky notes from their production. Flavored alcohols like bitters and liqueurs demonstrate alcohol's ability to extract and hold flavors.
Alcohol is a solvent for flavor.
Exactly. Finally, fundamental cooking reactions like caramelization, the browning of sugars, and Maillard blending reactions between amino acids and sugars at higher temperatures are key to developing rich flavors and colors. Dry and moist cooking methods influence how these progress. Even simple steaming relies on vapor condensation for heat transfer. The choice of materials like stainless steel matters. Understanding fats, triglycerides, saturation, smoke points is crucial. Emulsifiers like less than stabilize fat-water mixtures, and ultimately proteins, those large amino acid chains interacting with water, underpin so much of food's texture and behavior during cooking.
Wow. That was a whirlwind tour through the science of everything. It's truly an intricate web. So if we zoom out and look at everything we've covered, milk, eggs, meat, fish, plants, sauces, sweets, what's the big takeaway here?
I think the central insight is the extraordinary interconnectedness of our seemingly disparate food groups. It's all linked.
Right.
From the evolutionary pressures that shape milk production to the microbial symphonies in cheese and the delicate protein structures in eggs. From the muscle fibers of meat and fish to the diverse chemistry of the plant kingdom. There's this remarkable web of science, history, and culture woven into everything we eat.
Yeah.
Even the most basic culinary techniques rely on fundamental chemical and physical transformations that have been discovered and refined over millennia. It underscores that food is far more than just fuel. It's a complex tapestry of natural processes and human innovation.
It's amazing to think about all the invisible processes happening in our kitchens and on our farms, in the food itself. So for you, the listener, as you go about your day and prepare your next meal, maybe take a moment to consider how understanding these fundamental principles can deepen your appreciation for cooking and eating. Perhaps even embark on your own deep dive into the science behind a specific food you enjoy. What surprising transformations does it undergo to get to your plate? What's really going on in that onion or that piece of fish?
This understanding really allows us to see food not just as individual ingredients, but as part of a much larger and more fascinating story, doesn't it?
It definitely gives you a new level of respect for that seemingly simple meal.
Absolutely. Well, this has been a truly fascinating deep dive. Thanks for joining us as we've explored the surprisingly deep connections between some of our most fundamental foods. We encourage you to continue your own deep dive into the ever-fascinating world of food.